Welcome to the Customer Success Playbook podcast post-game show, where we break down our month's topic, our guests, and really recap this month's theme. Kevin, this month's theme, we talked about 30, 60, and 90-day playbook for CS leaders coming into an organization, specifically around startups and mid-sized companies. We had Marcus Vasell on the show. He talked about his maturity model and how do you go into an organization and see where they are on the spectrum. Kev, what are your thoughts after January's topic?
Yeah, so I think we'll start with Marcus, and Marcus was great. Enjoyed the conversation with him, and looking at the maturity model that Marcus defined is really a good starting place to kind of look at your organization and say, okay, how's my organization set up? Where does it fall in the maturity model? Depending on how mature the company is there anything I want to take away from this maturity model in considering my strategic plan for how I mature the organization beyond the starting point? So I think that was good. Any thoughts on Marcus?
No, Marcus was great, man. I enjoyed having him on. I think the way he framed the model was really good. I would say, Kev, for my big sort of aha or takeaway for the month was, we did the article this month, our first Customer Success Playbook article. So I think as we started to put that together, when we started and a little behind the curtain stuff here for our audience, I mean, that was our first time writing together and in joint creation like that. And I don't know how many versions we had, a bunch of drafts, but when you come into an organization, there is this sense of being overwhelmed. There's just, you're new, you don't know what's going on. There's so much to understand about your team, your customers, the data, where it's at. And when we were putting the article together, that feeling of that anxious feeling, I felt that as we were writing the article. We tried to, you're like, oh, what about this and this and this? And before you know it, you're like, can we really do this in 90 days, right? There's so much you wanted to learn. But what I liked is, we were able to put some downloadable assets in the article, right? And we structured it, which I hope people find value in that, because there is so much. I think distilling it down into some of what are the essentials, and having that checklist as you go into an org, okay, did I do this? Did I check this off the list, right? It's very structured. And even as we went through the month, Kev, that actually kind of helped me, because I was at first, I'm like, oh my goodness, this is overwhelming. And then we got to the final product of the article. I'm like, okay, this is more manageable, right? There's step-by-step instructions. I know that I'm not missing anything because I have it here covered. So that was my big takeaway, because as you walk into these orgs and you want to hit the ground running and have this great start, there's just a lot to do, and you can get a little bit overwhelmed as you step into these organizations.
Yeah, I agree. And actually, I think my first version of work related to this was just, okay, what are my questions? And I just started writing down a list of questions. That became one of our takeaways, I think, after modeling it a little bit. But really was just thinking all of the questions. What's everything I need to do? And then I started thinking, well, why am I asking these questions?
Yeah.
And the process of going through this and thinking about, all right, well, why are you asking these questions? What is it you're trying to achieve by coming up with this list of questions? And then what are you going to do about it? So, and that really, I think, led to the structure of the article, right? So first, what are we going to ask? What knowledge do we need to know? And then once we need to know it, let's think about what we've gathered and how that forms the structure of where we are today, and what goals did we learn that we want to achieve for our company? What's our roadmap to success, or our North Star that we're really shooting for? Especially, forget about right now, but 1 year down the road, 3 years down the road, 5 years down the road. We've got to build a team that's going to scale to that. And we've got to build a structure and a process that's going to scale to that. So in those last 60 to 90 days, the last 30 days, you're really starting to think about how you build your plan so that you can build an organization that grows to your expected North Star. And that's ultimately how, we got to the structure of where we start. But for me, like, trying to get there was, okay, let's start with the questions. And when I start with the questions, it's like that's the organizational structure for how to get to, all right, now I can think strategically about where I need to go.
Yeah, I love the question guide, Kev, because obviously it's super important to gather all of the information that we had outlined in the guide, right? Like, what's the revenue, what's the growth strategy, all the stuff we had in there. But I think and I'm kind of in this phase now, Kev. I'm in a new organization, so I'm in this sort of world right now, and a lot of times those questions are super helpful, not just because of the data you gather, but the data that's not there as well. That's just as insightful, right? Yep. So you start asking these questions and you realize, hey, we've never tracked that. We've never thought of that before, right? And so that's just as helpful sometimes as getting a number back or getting a piece of information. So I love that guide. I think it's great. The other thing I really like, Kev, that, and again, you really, this came out of, I think, one of your versions of the article draft, was prepping for these client meetings, right? Because you want to, customer success is all about making the customer successful. So you got to get to know your clients, right? You got to know your customers. So even like, what does their journey look like with your product or solution, right? And is that even, is that outlined yet? Do you know what that looks like yet, right? Or does that need to be defined? So going into that customer journey, and then just prepping for the meeting itself. I mean, that's, those are, what they say, first impressions, right? I don't know what the quote is, right, Kev? But first impressions are so important. And so going in there and all the kind of the background that you should gather, and how do you best prepare for this, and what are your objectives coming out of that meeting, so that you really kind of establish, a solid footing with that client, and then you can really kind of, use that in those other client conversations to really help shape that strategy that you were talking about. So, all of that, I think I was happy that the way that the article and the downloadable assets came out, and just an interesting process, Kev. I mean, again, we started with an idea. It changed a bunch of times. We ended up having 3 kind of assets that came out of it. And it was just a interesting journey this first month of doing it this way.
Yeah, agreed. I enjoyed the process. I felt like it was, a learning opportunity for us both in kind of thinking about how to write and achieve this together, as well as really solidifying thoughts on how you approach this scenario when you enter into a business. And I hope that people find that useful. Just some other thoughts around the content itself. As you were talking about the customer meetings and going into that, I was thinking it's true both for the customer meetings and for the internal meetings. As you prep your questions and your guides for going into both of those meetings and start establishing the relationships, you're going in really from hey, I want to understand where we are. And that's and how do we do better to help you achieve your goals? And we're doing that both with the customers and with the internal partners to our organization. And it's the foundation of establishing those strong relationships that you need to have when building your customer success teams, and when building your relationships with your customers, and when building your relationships with your internal teams. Because the truth is, a lot of your goals and objectives as a customer success leader are things you're looking at what the customer needs and trying to get those achieved. And you can't do that on your own. You need the company to be with you on that. So going in and trying to figure out how you can help both your providers and your customers with what they need so that they can do their jobs as efficiently as possible. And coming into these meetings, kind of understanding that you understand where they are, I think helps establish that as a foundation for really growing a strong team and a strong company together.
Yeah, no, I agree. And I like our, going kind of deep into this topic throughout the entire month, Kev. I really enjoyed that process, and I'm excited for next month, because next month we're doing the same thing with a different topic, right? We're really gonna talk about onboarding, right? And so important, right? I mean, if you're a client coming into just buying a solution product, right? The onboarding experience is essential. So we'll talk about, best practices for onboarding, how to scale onboarding practices. We have, I think, lined up. I know we have lined up Melissa Caldwell. She's the Vice President of Customer Onboarding and Success at Flux. Really, really excited to have her on, Kev, because, she's done this at multiple organizations. And we've had, even in our prelim conversation with her, just some of the stuff that she's been able to do coming into an organization that was kind of, I don't want to give too much away, but really had dramatic change, and really excited to understand how she did that, and really, again, for you and I, just to get deeper and deeper into a topic like this.
Yeah, and I think some of what I'm excited about learning about and talking about and kind of developing our thought processes on related to that is looking at how to grow at scale. Grow your onboarding services at scale, how do you implement self-service and onboarding when appropriate. Sometimes it's appropriate at certain organizations, it's less appropriate, but all of that is, critical to really scaling a business, and scaling an organization. So, and I realize not all customer success teams own onboarding, but you're definitely going to work with onboarding, and the results of your onboarding are going to impact your customer success team. So whether you own it and you're driving it, or whether you're working with the onboarding teams, you need to really consider how the onboarding process is going to impact your long-term success. And, from one of our previous shows last year, is one of the things we learned from Greg Danes. And one of my favorite results from last year is really the customer retention is often determined by first time to value.
Yeah, exactly.
So you want to keep that in mind as we go through our onboarding quest over the next month, and looking forward to kind of thinking through that and understanding how strategically we're going to apply that to an onboarding process as we talk about it.
Yeah, I'm just glad we don't have to pay Greg a residual every time I say time to value. I keep saying it. I keep using that line from him from our show last year. I'm glad I don't have to send him like a check every time, because he's probably retired now. So, no, it'll be exciting. We're going to do another article, Kev, this month, right? So we're excited about that. Get that out there. And for people listening to the show, we'd love your feedback. Check out the article. It's on LinkedIn. So go to our Customer Success Playbook page on LinkedIn. You can go to at Kevin Metzger as well on LinkedIn, at Roman Trebon on LinkedIn. Is it at Kevin Metzger? Did I screw that up, Kev?
Yeah, no, that's right.
Okay, I want to make sure. I wasn't sure if you went last name, first name there. It threw me off for a second. Check us out on LinkedIn. You can find the article there as well. We'd love feedback, right? I mean, I think the great thing about having a guide, with the questions and the client prep, that's like living and breathing, right? We can always add to it, refine it over time. So we'd love your feedback, right? Is there items in there that we should be adding to it, or what's your thoughts for others who have gone through this in organizations? So check us out. Check out our website at customersuccessplaybook.ai. Check us out on LinkedIn. Kev, anything else I'm missing?
Keep on playing.
Like, subscribe, keep on playing, and we'll talk to you next month when we talk onboarding. Thanks, everyone.